No visit to Kansas City, Missouri is complete without checking out the historic Union Station. It opened on October 30th, 1914, as the third largest train station in the country. At 850,000 square feet, its size is monstrous. The ceiling in the Grand Hall is 95 feet high. 3 chandeliers hanging from the ceiling weigh 3,500 pounds apiece, and the Grand Hall clock has a 6-foot diameter face. The Grand Station was a replacement to the first Union Station, which was in service from 1878 until 1914, and where Walt Disney's parents brought him to Kansas City for the first time. In 1945, annual passenger traffic peaked at 678,363. This station is where the struggling cartoonist Walt Disney would come down to take showers once a week in the 1920s. Due to its central location in the country, Kansas City was a hub for both passenger and freight rail traffic. However, this beautiful building was the scene of one of the ugliest events in the history of Kansas City. This place is truly massive. I don't think I've ever been in a train station quite this big. Of course, I'm from a small town in California, but it's pretty cool. Can you imagine how many millions of people had probably come through this building in the course of the time that it was built here? I think it's been here at least 90 years. Union Station on this side is where the assault of the Kansas City Massacre took place, June 17, 1933, in which I believe 5 officers were killed. Some mobsters were trying to free Frank Nash, who was being transferred to Leavenworth State Prison in Kansas. There was a massacre that took place. In an ensuing gun battle, Mr. Nash was also murdered. The lawmen came out with their prisoner right through that door, came out to some awaiting cars right about in this area where the massacre took place. These stains here almost kind of remind you of the murder scene that took place out here. The June 17, 1933 massacre at the Union Station wouldn't have happened if not for the lawless ways of convicted bank robber Frank Nash and his escape from the federal prison at Leavenworth, Kansas in October 1930. Nash remained on the lam until he was finally tracked down to Hot Springs, Arkansas, where he was arrested on June 16, 1933. Kansas City certainly has an old feel to it. Authorities made plans to deliver Nash back to Leavenworth by way of the rails to Kansas City and then by automobile from there. But as Nash's custodians led him in handcuffs across the Union Station parking lot to an awaiting car, little did they know that 3 of his allies were waiting armed and intending to free him. The resulting gunfight led to the deaths of Nash, 1 federal agent, 2 Kansas City police officers, and a police chief from Oklahoma. 2 federal agents were also wounded. So I was hoping to find this, as if there is a plaque out here. It's in memory of the law enforcement officers killed in the Kansas City Massacre, June 17, 1933. Killed in the gun battle were Frankie Hermanson. He is at rest at the Highland Park Cemetery in Kansas City. William J. Redgrooms, who is buried at Mount St. Mary Catholic Cemetery in Kansas City. Orrin Henry Otto Reed is buried at Oak Hill Memorial Park of McAllister, Oklahoma. Raymond J. Caffrey is buried in Omaha's Holy Sepulchre Cemetery. Prisoner Frank Nash is entombed in a mausoleum in the Linwood Cemetery of Paragould, Arkansas. It's kind of difficult to wrap your mind around the fact that 5 men walked to their deaths right through this area right here. And, it's not surprising, too, that all the guards kind of expected something, but there were so many cars out here that day that it was very hard to even track who might be popping out of nowhere with rifles, machine guns, to take Frank Nash back, who was very valuable to the underworld, one of the most prolific bank robbers in American history. It's believed the 4 men masterminded the attempt to rescue Frank Nash from the authorities. They were Richard Tallman Galatas, Herbert Farmer, Louis Stachy, and Frank B. Malloy. The 3 men chose Vernon Miller to free Nash. It's believed, but not proven, that Miller sought the help of Pretty Boy Floyd and Adam Ricchetti. A very bad scene. In fact, it changed some federal laws regarding bank robbery. The lawmen arranged for Reed Vetterly, who was a special agent in charge of the FBI's Kansas City office, to meet them at the train station. Early the next morning, Miller, Floyd, and Ricchetti drove to the Union train station in a Chevy sedan and awaited the arrival of Nash. The armed lawmen escorted Nash through the lobby of the train station. Lackey and Chief Reed were armed with shotguns. The other officers carried pistols. In the parking lot, the lawmen walked over to Caffrey's Chevrolet, and Nash was told to get in the front seat. Lackey, Smith, and Chief Reed sat in the rear seat. Agent Caffrey was getting into the driver's seat as Vetterly stood with officers Hermanson and Grooms at the right side near the front of the car. Suddenly, 2 armed men burst out from behind the car. Before Agent Lackey had a chance to warn his fellow officers, one of the gunmen shouted, "Up, up!" Vetterly turned just in time to hear a voice command, "Let him have it!" From a distance of about 15 feet from the Chevrolet, a man crouched behind a car and opened fire. Officers Grooms and Hermanson immediately fell to the ground dead. Vetterly was shot in the arm but ran over to Caffrey's side of the vehicle only to see him take a fatal headshot. As they sat in the Chevrolet, Nash and Reed were fatally wounded. Agent Lackey was seriously wounded by 3 bullets, but Smith was unscathed. After seeing that Nash was dead, one of the gunmen shouted, "They're all dead, let's get out of here," and with that they sped off. The massacre triggered a massive federal investigation that would give fame to a young FBI agent named J. Edgar Hoover. Things would not end well for the 3 alleged massacre participants. Vernon C. Miller, 37, was a World War I hero and police officer who turned to embezzling and became a hired gunman. A friend of the underworld, he was found beaten and strangled and left in a ditch in late 1933. And bank robber Adam C. Ricchetti was executed in Missouri's gas chamber on October 7, 1938. Bank robber Charles Arthur Prettyboy Floyd was 29 years old at the time of the massacre. Charles Floyd began his life of crime as an 18-year-old stealing money from a post office. 3 years later, in 1925, he was arrested in St. Louis for payroll robbery. He was out of prison in less than 4 years, but apparently didn't learn from his experience. He began robbing banks, about 30 of them, sometimes helping poor people buy food or giving Christmas gifts with the money that he stole. Floyd became involved with underworld mobsters, hired as a gunman for bootleggers and rum runners. He continued to insist that he had nothing to do with the massacre that day in Kansas City. He quickly became public enemy number 1 and was hunted down by FBI agent Melvin Purvis. 3 days before his demise, Floyd and Ricchetti robbed the Tiltonsville People's Bank. Ricchetti was captured the next day after a shootout, but Floyd temporarily got away. He was shot and killed October 22, 1934, in a cornfield outside of East Liverpool, Ohio. On his body was his watch with a fob that had 10 notches, reportedly made for each man that he gunned down. This death mask was made from his lifeless body. At his funeral in Oklahoma, an estimated 20,000 to 40,000 people filed past his coffin. Today you'll find him 6 feet under in Aikens, Oklahoma. There have been several movies filmed depicting either the Kansas City Massacre or Prettyboy Floyd. Bill Hopkins played the part of Floyd in the 1975 TV movie The Kansas City Massacre, in which Dale Robertson played FBI agent Melvin Purvis. In the movie Dillinger, Floyd is depicted by Steve Canale, hunted down by actor Ben Johnson playing Purvis.
Are you Prettyboy Floyd?
I'm Charles Arthur Floyd.
This is for Kansas City, boy.
I wasn't in on that.
There seems to be controversy today about whether or not the divot in the marble facade of the train station was caused by a bullet fired during the massacre. It sure looks like a bullet hole to me. If it's not, I'm open to hearing theories on what caused the hole in the stone.